Instead of blocking communication and building a wall between you and your child, you can use active communication to build a bridge. This 5-step process is going to help you teach your child cooperation and provide support. Active communication is designed for times when your child owns the problem or it's shared and you want to help your child find a good solution. You're going to find that the individual steps of the process can be used effectively in many other situations as well. The 5 steps of active communication are to listen actively, identify and respond to feelings, look for alternatives and evaluate consequences, offer encouragement, and follow up later. We're going to take a look at each of these 5 steps. When you listen actively, you're doing more than just receiving information. You're actively participating in the communication process. You're listening with your eyes as well as your ears, and you're keeping both of them focused on your child. You're going to listen with intuition as well as with intellect, and we're going to use all of our available brain power to address the situation at hand. The goal of active listening is to encourage your child to share what they're thinking and what they're feeling about whatever event was triggering the problem. And this is how we do that. First, we're going to give our full attention. Your child is going to feel encouraged by the attention alone. It's going to say, hey, I care about you, you matter, and I'm here to help you. We also want to keep our own talk to a minimum. When your mouth is open, your ears are not working as well. So listen more and talk less. We also want to acknowledge what we're hearing. Let our child know that we're taking their words to heart. So you can say something as simple as, I see, every now and then, or even, or man, that sounds frustrating. We want to ask questions to clarify. And after really long stories, we want to give a really quick summary to show that you have been paying attention. So let me stop you here. What I heard you say was that Billy went to the store and he was able to pick up some groceries. And when he got back to the house, he dropped all the groceries in the floor. Did I hear you right? We're just trying to provide a summary. We also want to listen with empathy. Empathy means sharing another person's feelings. I like to describe the difference between sympathy and empathy as a horse fell down in a hole. Sympathy would be standing at the top of that hole looking down and saying, oh man, that really stinks. Empathy would be climbing down in the hole with the horse and patting the horse on the back and saying, man, this really stinks. All right, so it's really understanding and sharing in that person's feelings. Try to feel some of what your child is feeling and show him or her with your tone of voice and your facial expressions that, hey, I really get it. In short, what we're doing is we're listening for the feeling beneath your child's words, and we're going to try to put ourselves in their shoes. That's what this is all about. When we're listening to validate the other person, especially our children. And so a lot of times they don't have the words to use for their feelings, and so we want to kind of put the words to those feelings for them. So we might say, hey, Ria, you look really down. What happened? And your tone of voice and your facial expression are both going to show concern there. Or, Jason, this must be really hard for you. Let's talk. And this likewise is going to be said with a concerned tone of voice and a facial expression. Or, oh, Jenny, that must have really hurt. Again, feeling the child's hurt and expressing your concern is the heart of empathy. Most parents make the mistake of only listening to the facts of a child's story. And while getting the facts straight is important, it's even more important to listen to what your child is feeling about their perception of the facts. So there are 3 reasons why it's helpful for children to learn to acknowledge and accept the feelings rather than keep them bottled up. When negative feelings are not expressed with words, they often get acted out through misbehavior. So for example, a child who's scared and hungry or angry about his parents' divorce, um, and he has nobody to share his feelings with. He's going to lash out in inappropriate ways without even knowing why he was lashing out. Or the repression of those painful feelings are going to lead to some children to having emotional or even violent outbursts, or suffer from stress-related ailments like stomach aches, headaches, bedwetting, just to name a few. And then the third one, a child learning to describe how they feel and reflect on their feelings before making a decision is part of what is known as emotional intelligence. People who learn to understand and manage their own emotions are better able to understand other people's emotions, and that's going to aid them in all of their relationships and really provide a leg up when it comes to cooperating with others. And unless your child just comes right out and tells you what they're feeling, you're going to have to discover this by yourself by listening closely to their tone of voice, watching their face, their hands, their posture. And by listening this way, you're not only going to be able to pick up a great deal of information, you're also going to communicate to them the most powerful message of all, that you really care. The recent research on brain development suggests that this feeling of being felt by another person is not only encouraging for children, but is actually instrumental in building important networks in their brain. When you have an idea of what your child is feeling, reflect those feelings back to them. You become what psychologist Chaim called an emotional mirror. Mirrors don't judge how we look or tell us what to do. They just reflect what's there. So find a word or a phrase that captures your child's feelings and connect them to what happened, which is the content. This is a really scary situation for you, isn't it, Rhea? Or, Jason, I know you're angry at me for being late. You're worried about the other kids, what they really think about your weight, aren't you, Jenny? We're just reflecting that feeling back to them. And when you correctly name your child's feeling, an interesting thing starts to happen. Their head is going to start to nod yes, their eyes are going to show recognition, and they're going to continue talking. Your job at this point is to keep listening and empathizing and reflecting back those feelings. So Rhea might say, yes, it's scary. I don't know what I'm going to do. Or Jason might say, yes, you said you'd pick me up right after practice. And Jenny would say, I don't like it when they call me names. By reflecting the feelings in tentative terms, like it sounds as though XYZ, or I guess that's pretty scary, right? So saying it sounds as though and then inserting the feeling, or I guess, and then inserting the feeling, you avoid coming across like you're trying to be a mind reader or a know-it-all. If you miss the mark about what your child is feeling, they can then correct you, but then it shows that you are listening and trying to understand. You want to be sure that we're understanding what the child is saying and what they're feeling. So if Rhea wasn't scared, Rhea would say, no, I'm not scared, I'm mad. I hate it when those girls pick on weaker kids. And so then at that point we might say, oh, I see, you're really outraged. And so by adjusting to your child's correction, the communication is then going to continue to flow. The third thing we need to do is look for alternatives and evaluate the consequences. So the first two steps of active communication create the right circumstances for solving problems. But since the children are usually not spending as much time developing and evaluating solutions to their problems as mature adults do, we don't stop there. Until the executive part of the brain is fully developed, children are likely to choose the first solution that just occurs to them without really pausing to consider other options or even the likely consequences of their first choice. The parent's role is to slow them down, help them look at various options, and predict the likely consequences of each option. So you can move on to step 3 by asking simple questions like, What can you do about that? Or what else can you try? After each alternative that your child comes up with, you can help them to learn to predict possible consequences by asking something like, what do you think would happen if you did that? And then we encourage the child to think of alternatives on their own rather than pushing your own ideas. And that's going to help them to develop their own problem-solving skills and the persistence to keep thinking when solutions don't really come easily. It's also going to keep them from being able to blame you if the solution doesn't work out well, which is going to strengthen their sense of responsibility. But if your child does need prompting, you can gently suggest some ideas. Be careful not to take over, or otherwise, it's going to seem like you're insisting that they do it your way. Remember that your child is the one that owns the problem, and your role is to be a helpful consultant who makes suggestions, but not necessarily dictating solutions. You might just simply ask, would you like to know what others might have done in a situation like this? And then we can share our own experience. This is another non-threatening way of introducing an alternative to your child, is by sharing a story from your own experience. If you faced a similar problem, you can share what worked or didn't work for you. So, for example, I don't know what you're going to decide to do, but that reminds me of a time when I wasn't invited to a party that I really wanted to go to. I sat around feeling hurt for a while, and then I decided that I wasn't going to let it ruin my whole week. So I found someone else in my class who wasn't going to the party, and I invited her to play at my house on that day. And we spent the day together having a great time, and I made a new friend too. We want to be careful not to turn this into a lecture of the, when I was a child, I walked 5 miles in the snow type. Remember that your child must feel free to use or not use your ideas as they think best. Unless their solution is unsafe or it violates your family values, it's best for you to remain accepting even if they do choose an alternative that you think is going to fail. After all, they own the problem. Plus, there's a lot to be learned from failed ideas. The fourth thing we want to do is offer encouragement. So your child may or may not be ready to commit to a course of action at this point. Remember that even Albert Einstein often needed time to let new ideas incubate before he made his decisions. Either way, your encouragement can give your child the courage to follow through with action. So some examples here are, hey, that sounds like a good idea to me. Let's see how it works out. Or, like I said, I don't know what you are going to decide to do, but you're a smart kid and you're going to think of something. Or, I really like your attitude about this. Or, hey, you're really thinking this through. Nice going. Then we want to follow up later. You and your child can really learn a lot by talking about how the problems turned out. First, we want to ask how they handled the problem, and then we want to ask the results that followed. So, for example, hey, how did it go with whatever you guys were talking about? Or, remember that we had that talk about XYZ the other day? I was wondering how it turned out. And this follow-up is going to help your child learn from the experience and validates that your interest was genuine. If the results were good, then a little encouragement from you is all that's required. So, for example, hey, that's great. I'm glad it worked out for you. But if the results were poor and the problem still exists, or if the new problems were created, then you can start the active communication process all over again with step 1 to help your child find another solution. So, for example, well, that's disappointing. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Let's see what we can learn from this, and then we can talk about what to do next.